Hello and welcome back to Bookish and welcome to Saturday Hodgepodge. This week's Hodgepodge comes to you with nice gloomy lighting thanks to the fact that it's a gloomy day here where I am. And I think this Hodgepodge is the least hodgepodgey Hodgepodge I've ever created because, as far as I can tell, unless I think it's something else to talk about, it's just all books this time around. And so that has a large part to do with that I am participating in two kind of read-alongs, readathons, in November, and I'm finishing up a readathon, read-along in October. So it's really just kind of books. So I thought I would start off with the read-along. So the first read-along I'm going to be participating in November is called Skoden, which is the new name for what used to be referred to as Indigathon. So Skoden is hosted by and more or less organized by Kim over at Native Lady Book Warrior. I'll leave a link to her channel down below. She has created prompts for this, prompts that, because I'm trying to balance two things at once here, I'm not going to go into, but great video, great channel. Please go check her out. I'm going to read three books written by Native Americans. The first one is a work of fiction, and it's the only work of fiction I'm going to read this month, and that is Housemaid of Dawn by N. Scott Momaday. I believe this book won the National Book Award. It may have won the Pulitzer. I can't remember exactly which award it won, but it's kind of, you know, a modern classic, and I definitely want to read it, and so I'm going to read that book this month. The other two books I'm reading for Skoden are Red Nation Rising from Border Town Violence and Native Liberation, which is authored by, kind of co-authored by Nick Estes, Melanie K. Yazzie, Jennifer Nay Denetdale, and David Correia. I believe those are the four authors who kind of have written these essays about exploring issues on that kind of, what I believe to be is kind of on the border between white settler America and Native Americans forced to live on reservations. And it's kind of, if you know anything about Nick Estes, who is the author that I researched to find this book, it's kind of about Native American unity and activism, and I'm really looking forward to reading that. And then the other book I'm reading for Skoden is Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, which has been, you know, a really popular piece of nature writing here on BookTube for quite some time, and I'm finally getting around to reading it. Nature writing isn't always my favorite thing, but lately I've been reading a little bit more nature writing, and I'm really looking forward to getting to Braiding Sweetgrass. So I'm going to call that my Skoden Read-Along TBR, because I'm going to read those three books. Now, if you watch my channel for any length of time, you also know that I am a particularly slow reader. So for Nonfiction November, which is the other read-along I'm going to be hosting, I don't have a TBR so much as a pile of possibilities. Thank you, Kazen, for creating the concept of pile of possibilities to replace TBR. Now, you should probably know that Nonfiction November is essentially organized, created, and the prompts are come up with by Olive over at A Book Olive. I'll leave a link to her introduction video below. You know, just really one of the titans, I think, of BookTube, and really we should give a lot of credit to for trying to and doing her best to promote and revive and encourage and spread nonfiction reading here on BookTube. So Olive has created four prompts. Her prompts are always vague, they're always one word, and they're always really open to interpretation, which is great because I'm going to be doing some interpreting. So her four prompts, her four single word prompts are record, element, border, and secret. So some of my Nonfiction November is going to be reading the books that are on my TBR for the Skoden Read-Along. For instance, so some of the books I'm going to mention here again. So for record, one of the possible titles I'm thinking about reading is One Writer's Beginning by Eudora Welty, which is a short book in which she kind of discusses, I think, how she became a writer and maybe something about her life as a young woman growing up in Mississippi. The other book that I may be reading is in my pile of possibilities for the prompt record is The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, which is a book that's been read on BookTube by many people and really important, I think, to understanding the kind of current racial climate in the United States of America. I really want to get to it, and it seems perfect for record because it essentially is establishing a record of kind of how the prison industrial complex has created a new kind of Jim Crow era. At least that's what I believe the book is about. The second one-word prompt is the word element. And so for element, I'm going to count Braiding Sweetgrass as my book for element. I'm for sure going to read that, so I'm for sure going to fulfill one of the prompts. But I would also like to read River of the Gods by Candice Millard. Candice Millard is one of my favorite popular writers of popular history, and this is a book, I believe, about exploring or discovering the source of the Nile River, and I got it for my birthday in August, and it keeps showing up on TBRs or Piles of Possibilities, and then I keep not reading it. So I want to get to it this month. The next word or the next prompt is border, and that book, Red Nation Rising, which I already discussed, that I'll be reading for the Skoden Readathon, I'm going to count that as my border book because it specifically mentions border towns in the title. And then for secret, I have 3 books that I think are possibilities that I may read. The first is The Sum of Us by Heather McGhee, which is essentially a story about how discrimination actually and the poverty it causes and all the other problems it causes actually are problems for all of us. And if we, eliminated elements of, or all the elements of systemic racism in the United States, people of all races would benefit, that we would all benefit. To me, that sounds like she's exposing a secret that apparently a lot of people don't know, because a lot of people continue to promote racism. I'm also thinking of reading The Source of Self-Regard, a book of essays by Toni Morrison, which has been recommended to me by several people. I love Toni Morrison. I do want to read it, so it's possible that I'll be reading that book, and I'm going to call that a secret since she's kind of, what I'm theorizing is that she's revealing some of her inner thoughts about writing and about the experience of being an African-American writer and editor. And then I also may read Everybody Was So Young by Amanda Vaill, which is the story of Sarah and Gerald Murphy, who were friends with Fitzgeralds and Hemingways, and the kind of story about their relationship and their friendship, which I intended to read for May of the Moderns this year, but I didn't get around to it, so I'm considering that one of the books in my pile of possibilities as well. So there you go. There's my Skoden read-along TBR and my Nonfiction November pile of possibilities. And there may be titles that I've forgotten that I'll add into the pile of possibilities. Now, I just won't tell you all. You may also know that last week I did a tag called was it last week? The week before last, I did a tag called the Think Twice tag. I opened that tag up to my viewers to suggest books that would answer prompt 12. And prompt 12 was all about book pairings. And so what I asked my viewers to do is to nominate books, pairs of books that they thought would work well if read together. And I made a video about that this Tuesday, which I did instead of a tag this Tuesday. Well, right after I uploaded the video, which I uploaded on Monday of this week, I got a comment on the Think Twice tag, which was suggesting 2 books. And I felt bad that I hadn't, closed that down or maybe made the video private or something like that. And so I promised that I would read this person's suggestions, read their comment, and show their suggestions like I did for all the, suggestions I got there in the video. So that's what I'm going to do. So this suggestion comes from Ducky Little Dictum. They write, Prompt 12, 2 novels published in 1978. Dancer from the Dance by Andrew Holleran is a sumptuous, funny, sad celebration of gay male sexual freedom. And then It's by Larry Kramer is a blistering and undisciplined jeremiad against promiscuity and destructive self-indulgence. Both are still in print, and together they create an indelible portrait of post-Stonewall, pre-AIDS gay culture in New York City. That sounds like a really great pairing of books. So I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that I gave that suggestion its due. Thanks to Ducky Little Dictum for suggesting that. And, let me know in the comments if you've read those books, if you think that they would work well together. To me, they sound like they definitely do. And then the only thing I want to talk about for the rest of this video is just kind of a Victober wrap-up. So I participated in Victober, and I've been trying to get through 5 books in Victober, 1 on audiobook. So the audiobook first, I am almost finished listening to The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. We've gotten to the point where, part of the mystery has been revealed and there are only a few chapters left. So as long as I go on walks, the next couple of days, I should be able to finish that up, and I have really been enjoying that. I mentioned in a video on Charles Heathcote's channel, in which he was talking about Wilkie Collins, that I can't imagine actually sitting down and reading that huge long book. That to me it almost felt like a book that I could have only consumed via audiobook, and I still really feel that way. I don't know that I would have kept going if I were reading that as a physical book, which, you know, is a great thing about audiobooks. It gives us, you know, another way to expose ourselves to the story and writing of different writers. I've already finished North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell, which I thought had some really great stuff in it, but I didn't think worked very well as a book. I also finished The Black Arrow by Robert Louis Stevenson, which is kind of a youth-based, he didn't write it for kids, but the main character in it is relatively young, kind of maybe like a teenager, kind of adventure story set during the period of the Wars of the Roses, and their knights and their battles and their sword fighting, and, you know, there's rescuing of people, and there's all kinds of death and even a fair amount of gore. I thought it was really kind of a fun read, really got a maybe a not very serious book to cleanse my palate from North and South and to kind of distract me from the Moonstone. And then yesterday I finished reading, what's that? The third book, or is that the fourth book on my list. I finished reading Framley Parsonage by Anthony Trollope. And I have to say that this is the fourth Barchester Chronicle book that I've read, the fourth in the series I've read, if you count The Warden as number one. And this is the one that for me was the most difficult to get through. It was kind of a slog, and I think part of the reason for that is that one of the main characters, Mark Robarts, is just so kind of feckless, I guess is the word maybe, and so easily swayed that you can just see the problems he's creating for himself coming from a mile away. And it was almost like cringing, uncomfortable for me to read how many mistakes he made. And that made it kind of difficult. And then kind of the stories around the side of that didn't all interest me that much. There is a whole lot of politics in it that, to be honest with you, a lot of that just went right over my head. And really a lot of the fun, I think, of Trollope are the snide and tongue-in-cheek things he has to say about politics and culture and society. And so a lot of that just was lost on me because, you know, the politics of Victorian England when he wrote it are not something I'm familiar with. And then the love story I didn't think was particularly interesting, even though it was kind of satisfying in a way. But really, you know, at the end of the book, and I'm sure anybody else who's read it already knows this, the theme of the book is really pride, and the way in which pride can be good, but mostly bad, and all kinds of negative pride is exhibited. The pride of social standing, too much pride in one's son, too much pride in one's position in society, too much pride in holding elected power, too much pride in holding religious power, too much pride in poverty in one case. And then there are a few examples of positive pride. Pride in one's family, and then pride in oneself, and really self-respect on the part of one character, which ends up being rewarded in a really satisfying way. But it wasn't my favorite of the Trollope books that I've read. But I did think it was good, and I did think it definitely picked up quite a bit near the end. And then I started reading New Grub Street by George Gissing, and I'm about 40-50 pages into that, and hopefully we'll have that finished by the end of October, and then I'll do a more full Victober wrap-up, hopefully sometime maybe late next week, early next week. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, there you go. There's my Saturday Hodgepodge for this week. Look forward to your comments about any of the books that I've said I'm going to read or have read, or any things I've said in the comments section below. And as always, thank you for watching.